But listen, that's what makes us all unique. That's what makes us fit together. That's what makes any organization work. Did you see what a great mix you have in D and I and S and C? Can you imagine if your office had only Ds? Whoa, what would happen? There'd be a lot of that going on, right? A lot of decisions. A lot of decisions made, but who's going to execute, right? What if you had only high I's in here? Woohoo, that's right. It would be you would win the award for the most fun clerk's office in the country, hands down. But how much work would actually get done or completed? Not so much. But the holiday parties, those would be worthwhile. Okay. Now, how about if you had only S's in the organization? What would happen then? So someone said it'd be absolutely perfect. Yeah, with the S's, you would have like a really great, stable environment, but who would drive? Who would drive the decisions? Because the S's don't like to stand out and make quick decisions, do they? Now, how about if you had all C's? Accurate. Yes, you would be you'd be the most accurate clerk in the country. You'd have a great work product. But can you see how you all need every style? And here's one thing that I've really learned. I think when I was growing up, before I really understood this whole DISC profile, DISC style, DISC analysis, I didn't get it. And so those who weren't like me, I may have judged. Now I know nobody in here would ever do something like that. But I may have judged other people for their style. Like, well, why don't they like to hang out with anybody? Or why are they so caught up in doing this? Why do they act that way? So the great thing is once you really start to learn about this DISC, you start to understand that it's not about judgment, really. It's about embracing all the different styles for all the great strengths that they bring. At this stage of my life, I look at those. Who can guess what my style is? I probably shared a little bit when I was going through this, but what's my style? I and D is what I heard. I don't hear any C or S out there. Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? Can I get a C? No, you can't. So mine is D and I predominantly. And I respect, admire, wish that I had the traits and characteristics that the C and the S have naturally. Now here's the interesting thing though. I have all four styles, as do every one of you. And here's my role when we talk about influence, is to find a way, instead of just being a high I or a high D or a high S or a high C, our game is to become a high DISC. What does that mean? Yeah, the ability to bring whatever I need at the time. And so, I look at the S and I say, oh my gosh, you have so much patience. If I could get just an ounce of that patience, I would love it. Well, the reality is, I do have that ability and I can manufacture that. It takes some high emotional intelligence for me to do it, right? Remember that thing I said before about the line of choice? I've got to make a choice to have the patience. But of course I can do that. I have to be conscious of it because it's not my natural. I look at the C style and I say, man, do I admire your attention to detail. I'm constantly on to the next thing before I finish this thing, right? Really admire it, but that's not an excuse. I can't make an excuse for being a DI and say, oh, I didn't have time to detail or I didn't have time to finish it. No, I absolutely have the ability to be a C. It's just not natural, so it takes a little effort. It takes that thing called choice. The same for C's and S's. If you're a very high C and you're really caught up in getting it right and you're saying, well, I can't get this done on time because it's not right, and that's no good either. You pull up your D, you get it done. Does that make sense? If you're a high S and you've got change going on in the organization, you dig your heels in and say, no, I really don't like change. Not good. We know the one constant we have in life is change, so sometimes you need to pull up your I or your D and go with the flow. So it's about being a high DISC. It's about pulling whatever style you need to pull. It's also about respecting whatever style other people have. So when you see a behavior that is not the behavior that you would display, rather than judge it, you now get to look at that and say, oh, that person is a fill in the blank, DISC. That's a better blank than another blank you can fill in, right? Fill in that blank. Okay. What is this thing on the screen? Can anybody tell me? A chameleon. And what is the job of a chameleon? Yes, to adapt, right? To blend in. And why does the chameleon do this? Survive. It is full on for survival, okay? I would suggest to you that if you are interested in continuing to build your leadership, that this is also a requirement for us, is our ability to adapt. I want to share something with you that John Maxwell taught me. He taught me about this thing called the leadership lid. And he says this. He says, every one of us has a leadership lid. And all over the room, I look at each of you and I know that our lids are in all different places. Some of you have strengths in one area and some of you have strengths in another area. Some of you have areas to improve in one area and others in another area. So we're all over the board on where our leadership lid is. Does it make sense? Leadership lid. This is how much we've grown as a leader. What John Maxwell says is that your results, your organization, can never, ever outperform your leadership lid. I'd go so far as to say your results in life, your results in your relationships, your financial results, all of them cannot ever go past that leadership lid. That leadership lid is all about your own personal and professional growth and development. That's what we're here for. That's what we're kicking off. So you think about it. If we can grow you as a leader, all of the results will follow. And it's not just in business, although yes, you will have results in business. The results that you have will show up in every single area of your life as you continue to grow. So will the results. It makes sense, right? That's one of the reasons I got so excited when I read that book. Because I recognized this part is up to me. Well, that means if I choose to go here, then everything comes with. So in the spirit of there's always a next level, I don't ever want you to confuse your leadership lid with your leadership potential. Because where is your potential? How many of you know exactly what your potential is? I don't see any hands. I've yet to meet the person who tells me what their potential is. The fact is we don't know, but we know it's big. And here's the greatest thing about leadership. Leadership is a learnable skill. Every single one of us can continue to learn how to be more influential. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so knowing that we have an unlimited leadership potential, the most important question for each of you becomes, do you want to tap into that? And if so, how much? That was the decision that I made way back when I read the book, was to tap into that. And I wanted to go big. Of course, the D in me is competitive. I want to keep going big, keep going big. But that's a really important question to ask and answer. Maybe one of the most important questions you can ever ask and answer for yourselves in your life, would you agree? Is how much do I want to go after that potential? And it has nothing to do with anything that's happened so far in your past. It has nothing to do with where you are right now. Where you are right now is just a result of your past thinking. What it has to do with is the commitment that you make now will serve you for the future. I don't care what age you are. I was just working with somebody last week up in St. Louis who was in his late 50s, and I was just teaching him the concepts about DISC. And at the end, when I asked if there was questions, he said, can you tell me why I'm just learning this now? It was in the I don't know what I don't know part of that pyramid for him. He said, how long has it been around? Why don't I know about this thing called coaching? Why don't I know about this leadership development? Like, I'm excited, but I wish I had known way back when. So do I, but I'm grateful that I learned when I did. So whatever you do, wherever you are in life, you get to choose, and that's 100% up to you. Now, the really great thing is that the clerk's office has invested in you. They've invested in us to bring us in, to be with you. So you've got support here in addition to whatever you're choosing in your own growth, in your own potential. And so we grew up learning the golden rule. Everybody out loud, what's the golden rule? All right, so at some point along the line, we probably all heard this, learned this, and I actually think it's a really great way to live. I think it's a great rule to live by when it comes to values. If I am treating you the way that I want to be treated, it's hard to go wrong, right? When it comes to one-on-one interpersonal communication, rather than just a rule, I suggest a law. We call it the platinum law. What's the platinum law? Everybody out loud. Treat others as they want to be treated. What's the distinction? Yeah, it's rather than treat you the way I want to be treated, communicate with you the way I want to communicate, I'm going to communicate with you the way you want to be communicated with. Do you see how different that is in communication? That would actually take conscious thought and awareness. And it would assume what? It would assume that I know how you want to be treated. But hang on. None of you, I think, today showed up with a DIS or C labeled on your forehead. You don't in conversation just share with somebody, hey, here's how I'd like to be communicated with, do you? We don't do that. That's why the DISC as a tool is magic, in my opinion. Now, there are many different psychometric profiling tools out there. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and maybe you've been exposed to different ones over your career. Here's why I choose DISC. It's simple. Do you get that I like simple? It's simple. There's only 4 main styles to understand, and then you can kind of understand the distinctions of 2 or more of those styles together. But this is something that, in 1 hour's time, do you guys feel like you know a thing or two about DISC right now, about yourself and about others more so than when you came in this room today? How many of you learned something so far? Excellent. Good. That's almost everybody. Who did I leave out? So in 1 hour's time, I can give you an overview and get you to the point where you're going to start to think about it for yourself. You're going to start to look and assess with other people. This is what I want you to do. I want you to observe behavior. I want you to stay present, be aware when you're talking to someone. See if you can figure out what their style is. Next time you have a conflict at work, rather than immediately jump to a reaction type of phase, really think about, why do you think the conflict is coming up? Is this just a style? Maybe before you've judged it in the past, and maybe now you're going to see it in a new light and just say, oh, I get it. Maybe if I modify and I adapt my behavior and I treat this person the way they want to be treated, then we won't have this conflict. Does that make sense? Are you with me? And so let's imagine that I'm a high I and I'm working with a high C, and I get all excited about this project that I want to do. And the C doesn't seem that excited, and I might be like, what is with you? Well, the C is just not going to get my excitement level. They're just not. Doesn't mean they don't like me. That's just who they are. And so maybe the C is going to want a little more data, detail about what are we doing, why are we doing, what is the result going to be, what are we after? Rather than make that mean anything for the I, try treating them the way they want to be treated and pull your C up. Remember I said adaptation for survival. If you want to be a great leader and increase your influence, start treating them the way that they want to be treated. So it's all about adaptation, but you can't have adaptation without awareness. So are you ready for your homework? Everybody say yes. Yes. Is that the most excited yes you've ever given to a homework assignment? I'm actually going to give you one that you're going to like, okay? Your homework assignment, I want you to, at some point over the weekend, watch a movie. And when you watch that movie, can you do this? Everybody nod your head if you can do this, yeah? You might be doing that anyway. But here's what I want you to do. The directors in Hollywood, they get this thing called DISC styles. And they will typically over-exaggerate the different styles as they go in the movie, right? And so what I want you to do is just identify the characters. What is this main character? Are they a D, I, S, or C? And why? You might see some D characteristics and you say, okay, this person's a D because they're what? Give me an example. This person's a D because they're impatient. Impatient, perfect. So you see this character and they're really impatient and you're like, D. I don't care if you're right or wrong overall. If you say, because I saw impatience, that's a D style, perfect, you win. Or maybe you'll see another character and you think they're an I because they are what? Persuasive. Okay, this person's really persuasive and they're like out there and they're happy and people are following them, right? That's an I, and you can connect the two. This person's an S because they're steady, they're laid back. This person's a C because they're very analytical, right? So if you do that and you start practicing that, if you start looking for and gaining that awareness and connecting it with the styles, then that'll take you a long, long way. You start to learn to identify, you'll start to learn to adapt as you go. Okay, so those are a few things that I wanted to share with you. Now, one other thing that I'm going to share, I want to give you I've got a couple minutes. I want to give you some ideas of how to identify the various styles. One of the things I know, how many of you actually deal with external customers as part of your job? Raise your hands. Okay, quite a few of you do. Now, when you have an external customer and they're in a stressful situation, that's when our extreme behaviors show up. And depending on the level of emotional intelligence, that's not always pretty, okay? So, for a D, the extreme behavior could show up as aggressive, impatient. They could show up angry, right? So you might see some of that if they're in a stressful situation. So the I's, when they get into the highly stressful situation, they may show up as flighty or overly optimistic, or they might just come across as someone who is not really being realistic, okay? The S's, when they're highly under pressure, can become very resistant to change and even stubborn, okay? The C's, when they're under strong pressure, they can become very picky or fussy or perfectionist. So these are the kinds of things that you might observe when you're in a high pressure situation, whether it's dealing with external customers or, quite honestly, with your internal customers. So if you start to see those behaviors, just recognize that that's somebody under extreme stress. We don't always know what's going on with them in their lives, okay? So you just observe those behaviors and see if you can make sense of them for yourself and just identify, and that will really help you with the Platinum Law, which is, now if I can just treat them the way they want to be treated, I'm really going to help them along. So with the D profile in general, the way that you're going to perceive them, the way that you're going to be able to tell if someone's a high D, we gave a couple examples when we talked about the movies, but typically the high D will be impatient. They'll be checking their watch, okay? Those are two good key indicators for the high D. The high I style is going to be typically the one that you want to deal with when you have an external customer. Even with the internal customer, they're going to have a smile on their face. They're going to be warm and friendly. They're going to make you feel good, okay? So the I is usually a pleasure. The S profile, you will recognize them you just by the tone of their voice. If you ever have to say to somebody, excuse me, I didn't hear that, the S profile typically speaks in a much lower tone, okay? The C, and what you'll observe from the C, again reserved, will be a lower tone. The C typically is going to be a little bit more impersonal, okay? The C might be looking down more. They don't make eye contact as much. So that's the way that you can define and describe some of them. That's how you will be able to identify those styles. Okay. All right, so that is a really, really fast outline of what behavioral styles are all about. As I said, this is something that if you begin to study and learn, if you look up DISC on the internet, you're going to find all kinds of things. You'll see the descriptors. If you want to go to the next level, there are plenty of good books out there. We'll also be taking this further in our conversations as we work together throughout the year. One of the things that I'd like to ask you about, you remember that guy on the plane that I told you about in the beginning? I often think to myself, why did he give me that book? Why did I sit next to him on the plane? But why did he give me that book? Like, it made such an impact on his life. Why didn't he bring it home to his family? Or why didn't he hand it to somebody at work? And I don't know what you think about that. Some of you might say, oh, it was divine intervention. And some might say that was just a total coincidence. Here's what I believe. I believe that he gave me that book for a reason, that it was part of my path. And I believe that when he handed me that book, he also handed me the responsibility to share what I got from that book with as many people as I can. And that's a big part of why I do what I do. And I'd like to share with you that concept of continuous growth. I would love for you to go out and figure out what it is for you that looks like next level. How many of you would be interested in knowing what the name of that book was? Some of you are like, yes, yes, I've been waiting, I've got my pen out. I would like to share that book with you, if you'll allow me to share a secret with you first. Here's the secret. Secret is, it wasn't just the book. As much as I'd love to think that the book could be that silver bullet that gives me that drive and that desire and that success and everything else, like this book, this is the book. It was a great book, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't just the book. It was the commitment that I made to myself when I read that book. That decision, that's what changed the direction of my life, was a decision. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to share the book with you. And in fact, I have read many, many books since then where the authors have a very similar message, and in many cases, an even stronger message. And I'd like to share with you my entire book list, if you would like that. And this book list that I have is, there's two different parts to it. The first one is Success Magazine's top 25 books of all time for success. So that's a really cool one. And then I've put my top 10 on. Many of my top 10 are already up here, so I've given you an additional 10 that were really special to me. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do. If you would be willing, we would really, really like to get some feedback from you. We want to know what was valuable for you from our time together today. Was it valuable for you? This is the first time that you guys have all gotten together and done something like this. And to be able to give feedback, not just for us, but also for Clerk Rushing and for the rest. Is this something that's valuable for you? What do you want to learn about? So if you text your name and your email address to this text number, and just put in your first and last name, your email address, you will be sent a link. We're not going to send you any other text messages, I promise you. We won't be texting you. You'll just get the one link, and it will lead you to a digital feedback form. And that digital feedback form will allow you to fill in the information to let us know what you thought about this and anything else that you want to learn about. The more that we can assess what you want, what you need, where your next level growth is, the more that they can really create a program that will serve you well. And so if you have your phones right now and you want to send that text right now, I'm going to give you just a minute before we wrap up. We've got just a little bit of time left. I'm going to give you a minute to do this now. If for some reason you either don't have your phone or you don't text, that's okay too, because for those of you who don't have that, Holly is going to send out a link for you to complete the survey. So if I could ask for just 1 minute time, it's how many questions? Probably 5 questions. So it's a very, very quick, most are multiple choice. I'm going to ask you to just take a minute right now and fill this out. For those of you who don't have your phones and can't text this right now, if you would just take quiet time and reflect on what you've just taken away, what was valuable for you. We're going to give 1 minute, and then I'd like to wrap us up. So it's 11:20 on the clock right now. I'm actually going to give you, it's 11:20 with some seconds. I'm going to give you to 11:22. So go ahead and fill that now if you have your phones with you. Go ahead and send your text and fill that in. And by the way, when you do that, you are going to get an email from us with the list of books. So everyone who completes that gets the email with the list of books. And number 15 on the success list was my book on the airplane. So fill that out and you're going to get the list of books. And when you're done with your digital feedback form, just place your cell phones down and I'll know that you're done. And then we'll do a quick wrap up before we leave. While we're waiting, for those of you who aren't texting in the information right now or filling out the form, somebody raise your hand. Tell me what was valuable for you from today. What did you learn today? Who wants to share something that they learned today? This is that all-in participation thing again. Yes, thank you.
And I'm more than just one letter.
Excellent. Okay, you learned you're more than just one letter. How many others have you learned that same thing? You relate to a lot of them. Okay, what else in the back there?
The different personalities that everyone has. Be more try to adapt yourself to those personalities.
Excellent. So just the fact that everybody has all these different styles and learn to adapt to those different styles. Very good. What else? Yeah.
The reminder